This is the
Five Stars
podcast.
Let me talk to you.
Hi.
So, what do you guys want to talk about? Tell me we're not telling lies.
Thanks, guys. Back to you.
I knew I'd regret it. I just had this sinking suspicion in the back of my head. But I rolled the dice and said, nah, what the heck. I'll watch Saturday night's main event. It'll be fine. It'll be a solid 2 hours of wrestling that I can stream on Peacock. It'll be an easy show to review. What could possibly go wrong? Well, then I watched it. Or at least I watched whatever they bothered to actually air. That is a rant I'll save for the review. Alright, people. It's the Five Starr Wrestling Report. You know the drill by now. We're the wrestling channel nobody knows but everybody needs. And boy howdy are you gonna need this show. I needed a drink after watching that PLE over the weekend. I also watched Retro Raw, which didn't help my sanity levels any. At least that show didn't have any commercial breaks. Well, I just kind of jumped in head first with a rant, didn't I? Didn't even tell my viewers to hit the subscribe button, comment, give the show a like. I'll make sure you do all that. Then come back to check out the show every week for more venting and more frustration. YouTube and Rumble. Mondays and Fridays. Same stuff, different week. So should I attempt to breeze through this thing? Probably could take me less than 15 minutes if I actually tried. You know, I can't remember which one it was. There was a Saturday night's main event earlier this year that I didn't review. Can't remember when it was. Back in January, I think. And I just remember waking up on Sunday morning and seeing all the results come out. And I was like, oh yeah, WWE had one of those. And there was the one that I reviewed late last year. I think that was the one headline with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens for the title. After that show was over, I was just so fed up with all the damn commercial breaks. It's one thing to watch the show live on NBC. You're basically guaranteed a commercial break every 12 or 13 minutes in between quarter hours. But I don't have cable, so I end up just streaming everything on Peacock. Can someone rationally explain to me why the hell we need to have infomercials on Peacock during a live stream for these events? You can't just air the whole match in its entirety if we're watching on a streaming platform. God, that irritates me. It just takes away from the enjoyment factor because every single solitary match is broken up with some kind of infomercial or sponsor plug. I mean, that's the whole reason I gave up reviewing SmackDown a couple years ago. Because I was sick and tired of all the damn commercials. And unfortunately, that seems to be the direction all these SME shows are going. regardless of what platform you're watching it on. And that sucks, because I really wanted to enjoy this opening tag match with Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker versus Sami Zayn and CM Punk. But because of all the asinine commercial breaks, it was impossible to get into anything. And the fucking commercials were half the damn match in the first place. I haven't gotten the chance to even chime in with my thoughts on the whole Seth Rollins-Paul Heyman thing since WrestleMania. Whatever this faction is he's assembled with Braun Breaker and now Bronson Reed, as we found out by the end of the match. You know, I've been highly critical about Rollins for a very long time now. I'm just really kind of over the whole visionary, revolutionary Seth freaking Rollins shtick. It's worn out. It's tired. I'm sick of seeing him. I wanted to give the Paul Heyman alliance the benefit of the doubt because I was intrigued with the WrestleMania swerve, Paulie turning on Punk and Reigns and aligning with Rollins. Again, not something that was entirely unpredictable based on the interactions they were having on television, but I was curious. I wanted to see the direction they would take it, and especially when you know that the Raw after Mania is typically one of the more highly anticipated Raws every year. The Braun Breaker thing was cool. I liked the idea of him getting elevated to a higher position on the card, having him interact with the top guys. I guess the only question I still have with all this, A, where's it going? And B, what's the end game? The thing that I don't like is when WWE needlessly jerks us around with shit for months on end and not really giving us any clear signs of indication of where things are going. Like, yeah, it's cool that Breaker's being put in this spot, but what does he benefit from being a part of it? Is it going to lead to him eventually feuding for the World Heavyweight title? Or is he just going to be Rollins' muscle until they decide to flip him babyface and have him feud? The problem I have right now is that the group just kind of exists. There's no definitive indication of what their mission is or what they're trying to do. For my money, if you're going to go through this and try to give people a reason to care, then Seth needs to be the World Heavyweight Champion. Yeah, you can have him work a feud with Punk and Reigns in the interim. I have to imagine at some point there's going to be some kind of tag showdown with Punk and Reigns wrestling Rollins and Breaker. Or maybe if they're looking to include Sami Zayn and you want to make it a six-man, you can throw Bronson Reed in there as well. But the world title needs to be an objective of theirs. You can't just have this group meander around without possessing a major title, because then they're just a faction with no purpose. I know I'm jumping the gun with the Bronson thing. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, like I said, there were moments that I liked in this match, but the commercial breaks just totally killed it for me. And the last few minutes were good in the lead up to Bronson Reed showing up and spearing Punk through the barricade. Of course, that led to Breaker spearing Sami and pinning him. And then you get the whole aftermath where they hold down Punk in the ring so Bronson can give him the big tsunami splash or whatever they're calling it. And that was good. I like that they drew attention to the history between Reed and Rollins, talking about the rivalry and at least attempting to make sense of why Reed would want to join his group now. You know, it's cool to fantasy book and try to think up all these clever ways where they could take it. I'm just more interested in seeing what they actually do. I don't want to immediately discredit it and say, it's going to blow chunks. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm optimistic either. Not with this company's track record. So coming out of that, there was absolutely no way on God's green earth I was going to sit through Zelina Vega and Chelsea Green. Now, they could have booked Rhea Ripley to be the special guest referee. It wouldn't have been enough to get me to care about this. I mean, the fact that they tried to make a big deal out of Zelina getting emotional about her 15-year journey to finally win singles gold in WWE. She won a meaningless mid-card belt that nobody in their right mind gives a crap about. Sorry to burst the emotional bubble, but that's not an accomplishment worth celebrating. Especially when you're not over and nobody cares about your match to begin with. Which is precisely what happened with this Tampa crowd. I still don't get the hype with Chelsea Green. She is by far one of the most overrated female wrestlers in the modern era. Next to Charlotte Flair, of course. The internet fans in particular just love sucking at this girl's teats. I don't get it. I have no idea what the appeal is. Her ring work is sloppy. She's not a particularly attractive or appealing personality. Her promos are turn the channel heat for me. And she's always produced to be this ditzy moron. So nothing about her is ever presented seriously. She's got the worst gimmick. Her fucking dorky bodyguards aiding her to the ring. Like they're supposed to be her Secret Service agents or something. Hey, let me tell you something. Jack Victory was Paulie's Secret Service agent at one point. It doesn't mean it was ever a good idea. The only part of this I tuned into was the finish where Zelina completely butchered the 619 spot and broke Chelsea's nose. I don't even know what the hell happened there, but something got royally screwed up. I don't know if Chelsea was supposed to counter it, if her flunkies missed their cue and were supposed to cut Zelina off before she hit Chelsea. All I know is that the Tampa crowd let them have it because they booed the shit out of that botch. It was bad. So those are my thoughts on that. I was already in and out of the room while it was happening in the background. A far cry from what Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria did a few weeks ago for the other mid-card women's belt that nobody cares about. But at least that match was good. And so then we get John Cena versus R-Truth for the WWE Championship. I seriously wish I were making that up, but lo and behold, the year is 2025, and I'm about to sit here and review John Cena versus R-Truth for a world title. Christ. For the record, yes, that R-Truth. The same one that's been the butt end of all bad WWE comedy for the better part of 10 plus years. The same R-Truth that they've deliberately made out to be the world's biggest bumbling idiot. He's now wrestling for the top singles championship on a premium live special. This is where we're at with WWE in 2025. What can I say? And you know what? I hate to have to revert back to things I've said previously, but it warrants repetition here because it's a valid argument. Handsome Jimmy Valiant was massively over in 1986. It doesn't mean he should have been headlining live events or working with Ric Flair on the Bash Tour. There's a reason Valiant was intentionally positioned to feud with the Paul Jones army. And it wasn't because Handsome Jimmy was viewed as a top world title contender. Not with that roster. And I loved Handsome Jimmy. But I'm also smart enough to understand that there was a reason for why he was booked to be in that position on the card. R-Truth is basically WWE's modern day Jimmy Valiant. He's the comedy bit. He's the Santino Marella of 2025. Nobody views R-Truth as a main eventer or world title contender because the company hasn't valued R-Truth in that light for the better part of 14 years. So why the fuck would I take him seriously now? Again, I like Truth. I don't have anything against them. I'm just basing my judgment off the way WWE's presented him for the past decade. So the only thing I could really do was watch this match in a vacuum and discount all the sense of credibility. Because there is no credibility in this instance. The match sucked. At least it was short. It was about as much of a fuck-off Cena match as you were going to get during this garbage retirement tour they're doing. I mean, nobody actually thought Truth stood a chance here. Even when he stole Cena's stuff and hit his 5 moves of doom. Like, the people laughed when Cena kicked out of the AA at 2. Because nobody was emotionally invested in this. Cena went in there, did some basic heel shit, which of course didn't generate the right kind of reaction because the people were mostly cheering him anyway. Like, even after he kicked Truth in the balls and then pinned him with his finish, he's walking up the aisleway and the people are chanting, "Thank you, Cena." The whole thing is so fucked up. The psychology is completely thrown out of whack. This whole Cena heel run is an absolute disaster. As I figured it would be. Going back to February when they pulled the trigger, and I said, well, it's probably not going to work out in the end. Hey, who'd have guessed I'd have been right again? When everybody else was saying, oh, it's going to be great. Cena's heel run is going to be legendary and memorable. Well, it's been something. It's been a heaping pile of dog shit is what it's been. And you know the biggest ripoff in this whole match? We didn't even get a cameo from Little Jimmy. The fuck, WWE? What are we doing here? This company sucks. And then we had the cage match with Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest. Man. Still can't believe this feud is still going on. What on earth anybody in that godforsaken company sees in this feud? It's beyond me. Dude, I remember sitting in this chair back during the Rumble review in January when they were teasing this as going to be a potential WrestleMania match. And I was like, oh God, please no. I don't want to see that. Drew gains nothing by working a dead-end feud with Damian Priest. You know, the thing I was shocked to hear about was that Drew was basically going into this match with a bad neck. I didn't even think much of it at the time. I specifically recall the spot and thinking, maybe he's just selling. No. That spot from the Backlash PLE when Priest gave McIntyre the chokeslam off the staging platform, When McIntyre went to grab the back of his head after hitting the floor, he wasn't selling. He legitimately smacked the back of his head off the concrete. So naturally, 3 weeks later, he's just walking into a cage match with a potentially bad neck. Maybe a concussion. Who knows? Based on the finish they booked here, I have to assume that Drew's going to be out for a while. Whether it's an actual concussion or them just following protocol, I don't think they want to take a chance. For what it's worth, the match is fine. If the street fight at WrestleMania was mid, this is a minuscule upgrade in quality. They did a pre-match brawl on the floor, which led to Drew bringing in a couple chairs, which ended up being the key part to the finish. There was a superplex spot that Drew gave Priest off the top of the cage, which was probably the best spot in the whole match. And they ended up kind of going into finish spam mode where they were both kicking out of each other's finishes. You eventually get Drew missing the Claymore in the corner when he had Priest's head against the chair. Of course, that spot is always ridiculous on its face because, there's nothing actually trapping Priest's head against the chair. He's just voluntarily cooperating there in a vulnerable position. He can move at any time. So he does eventually get out of the way. Drew ends up kicking the chair and comes up selling his knee. At which point, Priest grabs one of the chairs and does the thing where he presses it up against Drew's throat and then slams it into the mat. So now Drew's selling his throat and his neck. And, I forget what else happened. All I know is that he gets Drew face down in the chair so he can give him that rotten-ass concerto spot where I'm supposed to buy that somehow the guy's brain matter doesn't get splattered everywhere after being smashed over the back of the head with a metal folding chair. Oh, and speaking of rotten, let's talk about that finish. So Priest calls for the door, and he just nonchalantly starts walking out of the door while still contemplating whether or not he wanted to go back into the cage. Why, I don't know. So then he just turns back and walks down the ring steps to win. And the crowd goes mild. Like he was going out to fetch the mail or something. What a fucking popcorn fart. I'm not kidding you. That was the finish they came up with. The most anticlimactic cage match finish of all time. He just walked out of the cage, sauntered down the ring steps, and that was it. Now, bear in mind, he was already out of the cage well before he walked down the steps. But I guess apparently in WWE land, the rules stipulate that both feet have to touch the outside mat, even though he was already out of the cage anyway. I just love how Jesse was so obsessed over the bullshit escape through the door stipulation. That was the highlight of the entire show, was him being so infuriated with WWE's rules regarding cage matches. Escape through the cage door. Have you ever heard anything more ludicrous? What a bunch of bullshit. He can just walk through the cage door? When did that become part of the rules? That's bogus. I'm not saying I disagree. I've always hated the escape the cage role in wrestling. So I'm not going to give him crap for it. It is a stupid role. It always has been. I've said it every time WWE's booked a cage match in the last 20 years. It just took Jesse the Body Ventura to finally call it out on an actual live broadcast. So again, I suspect that Drew's going to be out for a while. Elsewise, I have no idea why they did that concerto spot. I don't really know where that leaves Priest, other than pissing in the wind. But I guess we'll see what they do. And so that left us with the main event. Jey Uso versus Logan Paul for the World Heavyweight title. They had already let the cat out of the bag earlier when they shot that confrontation with Jey and John Cena. I mean, he knew at some point Cena was going to get involved here. There was a split moment where I actually thought, oh God, they're actually going to have Logan win the belt here. But once they queued up Cody's music, it was pretty cut and dry. I'm not going to spend forever trying to break down the match. I actually missed the first few minutes, right before they cut to their 97th commercial in 2 hours. From what I did see, it was pretty much what I would expect out of a Jey Uso match. Meaning that I wasn't impressed, and I still maintain that putting the world title on him was a colossal mistake. I never even bothered to watch any of the video packages or Raw clips in the lead up to this. So I don't even know how this match came about. We went from Logan Paul and AJ Styles to now Logan's getting a shot at the World Heavyweight title within the span of a month. It was one of the more underwhelming Logan Paul matches I can recall in recent memory. Probably even more underwhelming than the match with AJ. Because at least that match had a few moments that I could pick out. This didn't even have that. Outside the stuff with Cody and Cena interfering, I couldn't recall a single God-blessed thing that happened in this match had I not wrote it down. Jey hit a super kick on Logan when he went for the buckshot. Gave him a frog splash for a visual pin. That's when Cena came out to yank the official out of the ring. You know, we've seen that spot a lot recently. Isn't it oddly convenient that every time they go to set up the ref getting pulled out from the ring spot, his feet are always in the exact right position for them to do it? It's almost as if this shit is overly scripted and laid out. So yeah, the ref somehow gets rendered unconscious for several minutes, even though all Cena did was pull him out of the ring by his ankles. Apparently this ref had a brittle body. And then you get the whole deal with Cena and Paul trying to double team Jey until, boom, cue the music. And here comes Cody Rhodes for his triumphant return. Pretty massive pop, I have to admit. I did not expect to hear Cody get that kind of warm reception. So he makes a beeline down to the ring and gives Cena one of the worst crossroads I've ever seen. Well, Logan tried to hit Cody with the brass knuckles, but then Jey cut him off and speared him. And then he hit a second frog splash and got the win. And that's when Cody immediately went out to grab the timekeeper's mic and issue the challenge for Money in the Bank. Logan Paul and John Cena versus Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes. Great. Another fucking TV match being booked on a premium live special. Gotta say, they're getting a great use out of John Cena on this retirement tour. This was your plan? That's the big money match for the PLE coming up in a few weeks? Wow. I got nothing. These people have literally broken me. I'm speechless. WWE sucks. I'm sorry. I don't know what the hell about this product right now is interesting to people, but ever since the Punk McIntyre fallout from last year, nothing else has come remotely close to piquing my interest. This John Cena heel run is awful. I knew it would be, but I was just trying to keep an open mind from the onset. That's why I've learned to set the bar of low expectations so I don't get mad whenever something sucks. Especially with WWE booking, because so much of their execution with shit is terrible. And it doesn't matter what regime we're talking about, people. Vince, Hunter, it's all the same. Wake up. Get your mouths off the schlong of Triple H. These people have no idea what they're doing. They're raking in sponsor money left and right, charging high premium ticket prices. And yeah, I know when it comes to ticket prices, you're also talking about different kinds of packages. I mean, you're paying for photo ops, ring access, merchandise parcels. If you're sitting closer to ringside, duh, you're obviously going to be paying more money up front. You know, and the thing is, regardless of how you want to spin it, corporate greed, WWE intentionally jacking up the prices of things because they know they're going to make money regardless of where the revenue's coming in. So, what's an extra $2,000 per ticket to your local live event? The problem boils down to this. What are you paying for? A mediocre wrestling product with big stars that are massively over? I mean, yeah, sure. If you want to be a part of the chancel choir and show up to WWE events just to sing somebody's theme song, be my guest. You're a fucking idiot. But whatever floats your boat. Because that's all you're essentially getting. You're paying to see the stars. That's it. You're not paying to see the babyface hopefully get a piece of the asshole that's been a thorn in his side for months. You're not paying to see crazy hot angles. The draw isn't the actual stories or feuds. The draw is, hey, John Cena's coming to town. Or, hey, Jey Uso's going to yeet my hometown this week. Okay. And you're going to pay 4 figures to see that live? Here's an analogy that I'll leave you with just to wrap things up so we can move on, because I'm just tired of trying to prolong this rant. Chris D'Elia is one of my favorite comedians. He's coming to Pittsburgh this fall, so I'm going to go see him while I'm visiting family in town. The attraction with Chris is that he's going to provide a stand-up comedy session that'll hopefully be entertaining. Am I buying a ticket solely just to see Chris D'Elia in person? No. I'm buying a ticket because I want to see his act. I want to see what kind of comedy bits he has planned. Yes, I want to see Chris. Yes, Chris is the draw. But there's also the material aspect of what I'm paying for. It's why I haven't spent a dime on going to see a pro wrestling show in almost 15 years. I don't want to pay for a ticket just to see The Undertaker. I want to see The Undertaker wrestle or do an angle with someone. I want to see action. I want to see story. I need a rhyme and a reason. That's not what you get with WWE in 2025. I mean, you're paying double, almost triple the price of what you were paying 5 or so years ago for what's essentially the brand. Come see WWE live in your hometown of Cleveland. But why? Who's on the card? What's being booked? Doesn't matter, it's WWE. You're going to see the stars. See them do what? Doesn't matter, damn it, just buy a ticket now before they sell out. Yeah, that kind of coercion doesn't work on me, brother. I'm smarter than that. I'm not cheap. But I'm also not entirely lucrative when it comes to how I save my funds. I'll just say, I'm not stupid enough to spend 4 or 5 figures on a ticket just to see a WWE show. Some people out there are. And hey, it's your money. Do whatever you want with it. I'm just saying, it might not be the best financial investment. Maybe I'm out of touch. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. The only thing I care about as a wrestling fan is being given a rhyme and a reason. I'm a very simple person. Been watching wrestling for most of my life. It's never been that hard to please me. It really hasn't. A purpose. That's all I want. And WWE has not given me that since Punk and McIntyre last year. And until I see something of that quality again, I'm going to keep bitching and griping about the same lame duck crap we've been getting. Because it sucks. And I think more people need to call it out for what it is. This riding the WWE bandwagon shit is just getting old. Defending everything this company does, or the classic response of, oh, just let it play out. Fuck off. People have been telling me that shit for 15 years. See what happens. Let it pan out. Ridiculous. So we have now reached what many would consider a pivotal turning point in 1996. Actually, not just 1996, but pro wrestling as a whole. And it's not exclusive to the date May 20th. It's everything that transpired the night prior in Madison Square Garden. WWE's infamous MSG house show, which is mainly infamous for one notable thing. Unfortunately, it's the only thing that people remember about that particular event. And I'm obviously referring to the Curtain Call. I don't think I need to sit here and give you a breakdown analysis of what the Curtain Call was. I mean, most wrestling fans are at least peripherally aware of what happened. I'm more interested in discussing the outcome from everything that happened with the MSG house show, since the WWF meticulously decided not to mention anything about Hall or Nash, which is not surprising. I'm sure most of you know about the leaked footage. You know, the video you've seen over the years with the Clique doing their group hug and MSG inside the cage, that was all original fan cam footage. To my knowledge, I don't think WWE's ever actually aired their own version of it. Story for another time. I have some interesting thoughts about that. A theory, if you will. As far as my whole take on the curtain call, what I thought about it, what it represented, it's kind of a catch-22 for me, because the problem is that at the time, I was a kid when that whole thing went down. I barely even knew what the terms baby faces and heels meant. I knew about some of the inside lingo because my brothers were older and they would occasionally drop some of the carny terminology. Believe it or not, yes, they actually knew about that dynamic in the late 90s. I understood why it offended some of the smarter minds. Jim Cornette's been publicly open about why he thought it was unprofessional and exposed the business in the wrong way. And, whether or not you think he's out of touch, he's entitled to his opinion on it. I never really had much of an opinion on it when I was a teenager because, I didn't really comprehend how important kayfabe was in the wrestling business before my time. So, in hindsight, when you see the boys grandstanding and blatantly trying to blur the lines between reality and a work, especially doing it in front of fans like that, I sit here as an adult finding myself agreeing more with Jim's take on it. And I'm prone to hate the curtain call incident that much more as a result. Because that's exactly what Hall, Nash, Hunter, and Shawn did. Whether you like them or not. It didn't matter that Shawn and Diesel just got finished trying to rip each other's heads off inside a cage match minutes prior. Once you see that visual of baby faces and heels shaking hands or embracing after the fact, regardless of context, that's not the point. The fact is, they completely exposed that everything about their match was fake. That they were never actually mad at each other and they were really best friends. And there was never a reason for what they did. You couldn't make an angle out of it because Hall and Nash were leaving. So even if you wanted to work the people and try to come up with some convoluted story to explain why two guys that just hated each other 3 minutes prior are now kissing and hugging afterwards, you couldn't. It was moot by that point. The thing I'm still curious about all these years later, I've heard Nash on record saying that Vince okayed the whole thing. I don't know how much of that is true or not, so I'm not going to flagrantly denounce Nash here on the spot. If Vince did okay it, then he should have been ashamed of himself for allowing his talent to expose the business to the world like that. Because then you have to consider the aftermath with how Hunter got punished. Remember, this particular incident was why he didn't win King of the Ring. Because he was swept up in this whole ordeal. And that's always been the puzzling thing that I've never managed to wrap my head around. If Vince allowed this to happen, if he co-signed it and said, go ahead and have your man-friend orgasm, why did they punish Hunter? Was it because he wasn't supposed to be included initially? That it was only supposed to be Hall and Nash going out there to embrace Shawn? And Hunter somehow managed to swoop in at the last minute? You see what I mean? It's odd. If Vince gave these guys his blessing, then there's no reason for anybody to have been reprimanded. The problem was that Hall and Nash were leaving, so how are you going to punish them? They could have gone out there and dropped their pants and take a shit. It wouldn't have mattered. Shawn was a champion. He was Vince's golden goose. He wasn't going to get penalized. That basically left Hunter out there as the spare prick at the wedding. And then you think about it, at this point, he still wasn't considered a top guy. So it didn't matter. And in terms of how this affected any of the parties afterwards, Hunter was pretty much the only one that got fucked. And as for Hall and Nash, actually it was this specific week, May 20th. It's the night Scott Hall makes his Nitro debut. And of course he shows up as Scott Hall, even though he's still working the Razor Ramon gimmick. Which is one of the more genius things about it when you consider the warring going on between WCW and WWF during this time. The fact that Scott was still using the Razor Ramon gimmick without explicitly wearing the gear or using the name. He was just talking with the accent. And then you fast forward a couple weeks later, that's when Nash shows up and they really start kicking things into a higher gear for Bash at the Beach in July. And like I said, Hunter was ousted from winning King of the Ring. Shawn continued to flounder as a horrible world champion. And things just continued to spiral downhill for Vince and the WWF over the next year. But yeah, that was the curtain call. A blatant disrespect on the business. And I don't care how Hunter, Shawn, or Nash try to spin the narrative otherwise. You can't conceive of one way to persuade me that this incident needed to be aired in public. If you wanted to have the Clique have their little group hug orgy, you can save it for the locker room when the cameras aren't rolling. I know the internet still wasn't as big in the 90s, but people were still coming to these events with camcorders and phones. However many people they filled in that venue, 20,000 or whatever, you were bound to have at least a handful of people with recording devices. I mean, that shit was going to get documented in some manner, even through word of mouth. I still look down on it all these years later. And it really makes me frustrated as a longtime wrestling fan when I have to hear people try and defend the curtain call because it allowed for the fourth wall to be kicked down. The only thing it did was set the precedent that kayfabe was dead. And it didn't matter what was a work and what was a shoot anymore. And unfortunately, that blurring of the lines led to some really awful fucking shit in the coming several years. For all the people that love sucking at the schlong of the Attitude Era, can't wait to rip into that catastrophe of a time period. Y'all are in for a rude awakening. It wasn't as great as it's been chalked up to be. But let's get into this week's episode of Monday Night Raw. The go-home show to In Your House. Loose air quotes around that, because we're talking about a pay-per-view that didn't really air to begin with. We open this week with a segment featuring Steve Austin and Sable's tits. Well, actually, Mark Merrow wrestled. But in the scope of what really mattered here, Sable was on camera to show off her boobies. And that's pretty much the only thing that Vince and the booking team cared about when it came to the Mark Merrow-Sable pairing. We all knew who the real draw was. Which actually reminded me here, one crucial thing I didn't talk about during my whole tirade about the curtain call. The fact that Hunter was booted from winning the tournament pretty much sealed the deal for Steve Austin. In addition to getting that legendary Austin 316 promo, it allowed for Vince to start getting Austin prepared to become the next top star in a couple years. It's actually kind of incredible in hindsight to look at where Austin lands in a couple years versus what he was doing just a month prior to winning King of the Ring. Here he is on Monday Night Raw having a back and forth match with Mark fucking Marrow. And he can't even beat the guy straight up. Savio Vega runs in at the end and straps Austin in the back to cause a disqualification. If I took a shot every time Vince referred to Marrow here as Wild Man Mark Marrow, I think I'd be dead. It's like him never being able to call Hunter Triple H. He always had to call him Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Like it's all hyphenated together in one word. He did the same thing with Marrow. Wild Man Mark Marrow. Wild Man Mark Marrow having some difficulties here with Steve Austin. Wild Man Mark Marrow is making his comeback. Wild Man Mark Marrow is one of the most boring professional wrestlers of all time, pal. He didn't actually say that last part. That was my thought watching him. If you're thinking that I'm deliberately glossing over the match because there's nothing to say, it's because I'm deliberately glossing over the match. They did some moves. Sable was out there on the floor with one facial expression while she twirled her gimmick around. I'm not referring to her boobs. I'm referring to whatever that long whip thing was. The finish saw Ted DiBiase trip up Marrow so Austin could knee him in the back. Then right as Austin tried to go up top for a move, Savio hit the ring and attacked Austin for the DQ. So those two are slated to have a Caribbean strap match. Meanwhile, Hunter is still feuding with Mark Marrow for reasons that I don't believe have ever been explained. The only thing we saw was that random backstage pre-tape where Hunter and Marrow got into a fight. And now they're feuding because... why not? Gotta start somewhere with the Wild Man. They signed him to a guaranteed contract. May as well try to get some mileage out of him. By the way, that's legit. I believe Mark Marrow was one of the first WWF talents to actually receive a guaranteed contract. Of all fucking people. So then we had a pair of video packages, one of which included Ahmed Johnson being crowned the King of Kuwait, or something to that extent. The other was the Ultimate Warrior signing autographs for his new comic book. Because, well, you see, in addition to the Warrior running a wrestling school, he also writes comic books in his spare time. I haven't done the math. I'm pretty sure we've seen more footage of the Ultimate Warrior doing outside projects and actually wrestling since he came back to the WWF. How many matches has he worked? 2? One of which wasn't even a match. I don't count that garbage he was involved with at the last In Your House with Goldust. Not that I'm advocating for more Warrior ring time. The less we see of him wrestling, the better. That brought us back to the ring for Savio Vega and the 1-2-3 Kid. Early on here, Lawler mentioned the fact that Tom Cruise was starring in Mission Impossible, a film that would be coming to theaters soon. Yep, that made me cognizant of how fucking old I am. Can you believe that movie is almost 30 years old? Dude, I saw pictures of Tom Cruise recently. Father Time has finally caught up. That man aged like fine wine, but he does not look young anymore. Anyway, DiBiase was back on commentary holding a chauffeur's cap. I guess that's an important distinction to make regarding the whole Caribbean strap match stipulation. If the heels win, then Savio has to be DiBiase's personal Uber driver, which is a great stereotype if you think about it politically incorrect. Lawler was trying so hard to make a racial joke at one point. Vince was not having it. As soon as he tried to mention the idea of a Puerto Rican getting a driver's license, Vince immediately shut him down. It's a fine match. The Kid got some heat on Savio right before the break. Ended up with the Kid missing a big frog splash at the end. And then Savio immediately cradled his shoulders down and got the pin. Which then led to this incredibly stupid afterbirth. Only in the WWF would somebody put this idea down on paper and think, yeah, that's great. Let's do this. So Austin comes back out and jumps Savio after the bell. He and the Kid start putting the boots to him while DiBiase gets into the ring with his taxi cab. And so Steve grabs the Caribbean strap. He then proceeds to not start whipping Savio with the strap as the Kid holds him down. Instead, they hog tie it around Savio's body so that DiBiase could place the cap on his head. Because, well, it's not degrading enough for Savio to be strapped and whipped like a government mule. The real heat in this feud is the idea that Savio might have to wear a chauffeur hat. How debilitating. So yeah, that was dumb. Way to go, idiot heels. Let's not whip the babyface like a dog and get some actual heat on ourselves. Let's tie the strap around him and make Savio wear a chauffeur cap. That'll get the people angry. If by angry you mean completely ambivalent, then sure, success. So then we go to the MSG footage where we do not in fact see anything involving the cage match with Shawn and Diesel, and or the curtain call. No, instead the footage they chose to air was the Body Donna Godwin Brothers tag title match, wherein we see a backstage pre-tape where Sonny comes out of the Body Donna's locker room after supposedly giving Phineas a blowjob. And then we see the highlights of the match, where Sonny spends the entire thing trying to distract Phineas to cost him the belts. And then the swerve comes at the end when Phineas grabs Sonny and smooches her on the apron. Then he hits Candida with a slop drop and wins the belts for the Godwins. So yes, Sonny got outsmarted by a lame-brained pig farmer. It might sound stupid in theory. It is. But then you also have to consider that this was WWF's tag division in 1996. Tully and Arn versus the Rock and Roll Express, it was not. Surprisingly, it was supremely less stupid than the segment that followed. If you're looking for a textbook case of how to make your babyfaces look like mega dorks, Paul, this segment's a great model. So Paul Bear's being interviewed by Jim Ross, and they're talking in front of a casket, which you can barely see because the building's nearly pitch black anyway. And while they're hyping the Undertaker Goldust match for Sunday, JR wants to get a word in with the Undertaker. And so he asked Paul point blank, is he inside this casket here? To which the idiot manager Paul Bear responds, well, where else would he be? Oh. So, the coffin lid opens up. Taker begins to cut a promo on Goldust while laying in the casket, after he's made it blatantly obvious to the heels where he's hiding. So what happens? Well, the Undertaker's in the middle of his promo, at which point you see Mankind run in to slam the lid shut, and he starts tying a giant cable around the casket to trap the Undertaker inside. Meanwhile, Goldust is casually stalking Paul down the aisleway toward the ring. And so Mankind gets the cable sealed. He then walks toward gorilla position, only to then come back with what Vince described as a giant steel pole. And no, I will not make a sex joke out of it. It was indeed a giant pole. I have no idea where Mankind found this fucking thing. But he starts bashing the lid of the coffin. Ends up tipping it over onto the concrete as he continues beating it with his giant stick. And, well, I had several questions while this was all going on. Let's start with the obvious one, and then we'll ask the more significant question. The Undertaker was allegedly trapped inside this coffin, correct? That's what we were led to believe. I thought the Undertaker had mystical powers. Why couldn't he simply teleport out of the casket? How was he trapped? Shouldn't he be able to just magically leave the casket via supernatural powers? I'm not saying it would make sense, but it would be tying in with the Undertaker's gimmick. The fact that he's a dead guy, he should be able to just come and go as he pleases. But the more vital question here, something you'd actually have to think about, but I think it's valid. How in the fuck did any of this help to build Undertaker versus Goldust? All this did was build hype for the Undertaker-Mankind feud, which is something that they've deliberately put on the back burner in order to get to the Goldust-Undertaker feud in the first place. I watched this and I'm like, hold on. What is the match on Sunday? Because if it's supposed to be Taker and Goldust, they did a very piss-poor job in making me interested in seeing that. They got me wanting to see Mankind versus Taker more than anything. Which I know is the end goal, but... well, why the hell am I paying to see Goldust versus Taker in a casket match? How does any of this make sense? Everything about this was one giant question mark. Was there any purpose for Goldust coming out? He did nothing. He walked toward the ring, and then he walked to the back with Marlena. Foley did all the work. He closed the coffin, beat it with that giant stick, tipped the casket over, left Taker for dead. Goldust did nothing. I don't get it. This is a giant epic fail, which left us with the TV main event. Speaking of giant epic failures, Davey Boy versus Jake the Snake Roberts. Holy shit, this fucking match reeked. Before I even attempt to address that, let me just briefly touch on the pre-match deal they shot. So right before Jake made his entrance, we had Camp Cornette in the ring. Or should I say whatever's left of Camp Cornette. It was Jim, Davey Boy, Diana, and Clarence Mason. And they'd basically concocted some kind of legal binding agreement that prevented Shawn from coming within a football field's distance of Diana. Because after all, Shawn's a womanizer in storyline. Gotta protect the females out there. Lord knows Diana Smith needs to be protected by a 250-pound Shawn Michaels. So they go through all this rigmarole of having Jim do the Heat promo, basically saying that Shawn won't be able to do color commentary for the main event because he'd be breaking the contract agreement by being too close to Diana. So out comes Gorilla Monsoon to basically let everybody know, yes, this contract is legally binding. However, there's nothing in the paperwork that suggests that Diana Smith needs to be here at ringside. So he just tells her to hit the bricks. Which of course leads to the heels throwing a fit, because they got outsmarted. Or at least I think that was the case. Surely it wasn't because of the fact that Diana got booted from ringside, right? Lord knows we couldn't have this main event if Diana Smith couldn't be at ringside for it. Give me a break. So yeah, she goes to the back with Monsoon while Shawn comes out to join the commentary team. He, did basically break the contract by coming out while Diana was leaving. I'm almost positive that Shawn and Diana were within a football field's distance of one another. But who am I to argue technicalities? So we get the match. And I'll tell you, man, if they wanted to create a drug to cure insomnia, all they need to do is have anybody watch this fucking match. God, this match sucked. Maybe even more infuriated by the end when it essentially went to a no contest because they ran out of airtime. Shawn and Lawler were absolutely unbearable during this thing on commentary. I can usually tolerate heel commentator Jerry Lawler in spurts, but goddamn he was so annoying here. He just spent the whole match bickering back and forth with Shawn. And not even in a good worked manner. It just turned into shut the fuck up heat by the end. Meanwhile, you got Davey in there working over Roberts' leg for like 9 days. He's just putting Roberts in a stationary hold, doing absolutely nothing. They're just laying there on the ring mat. Every so often, Davey would get up and stomp on Jake's knee some more. Then he would just put him in a submission hold and crank on the leg some more. And I'm watching as the clock is winding down, like, there's 2 minutes left in the show. Surely there's going to be something that happens here, right? They're not just going to have Davey work over Jake's leg through the remainder of the program. No, it's actually even worse. What happens is, Diana comes back down to ringside. She gets in Sean's face. She attempts to throw a cup of water on him, but completely misses. I think she hit everybody in the front row plus the Spanish announce team. Completely missed Sean by 1.5 miles. And so Sean cold cocks Jim Cornette as he goes walking toward Diana. And then the show goes off air with Bulldog hammering Sean from behind with a double axe. I am not shitting you. That is how they ended the program. That was their go-home angle to the pay-per-view main event. A boring, sleep-inducing 13-minute Jake Roberts British Bulldog match with one of the dumbest closing angles to a Raw episode I've seen in a very long time. I was so angry after watching this. Normally, I don't get mad after watching Raw. I usually just write it off and say, well, it was about what I expected. This angered me. It was almost a carbon copy of my thoughts with the Goldust Mankind Undertaker angle earlier. Somebody wrote this segment down on a piece of paper and said, this will be great for television. It'll work splendidly. Well, it worked in the sense of getting my blood pressure boiling. So they achieved that much. Fucking awful. Absolutely awful. One of the worst pay-per-view builds I've seen for a WWF show since I started doing these retro reviews. Dude, everything about this card is so atrocious. There is nothing on this Beware of Dog pay-per-view that I'm genuinely interested in watching. Up to and including the main event. Like I said, man, divine intervention. The only thing that saved those poor South Carolina fans the following week. I'm actually interested to see how they patch that all together for the network release. Because I've never actually seen the edited version of In Your House. When they ended up retaping all the matches that aired during the blackout. So that'll be kind of neat when we review the show next week. I actually remember at the time, when we ordered the pay-per-view, I can't remember which match it was for, but, 1 minute, someone's making their entrance, and then you just get this generic no signal message, and the screen just goes black. That was my lasting memory of In Your House 8. I never saw the show, past whatever match they aired. I think it was one match. But that'll be next Sunday's endeavor. Looking forward to it. But for now, we're going to wrap it up there. My brain is just fried. Got these fucking assholes over there hammering on rooftops right now. It's fucking Sunday and they're working. I know people are going to be able to hear that in post-production too. I'm sorry. I can't do anything about it. It's annoying. But I'll be back this coming Friday for more classic coverage. Thanks everybody for checking out the show, and catch you all soon. Take care. Peace out.